Hello guys, this is Oroth and a warm welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're gonna look at a Crusader dungeon build that I've had great success with. And first we're gonna take a look at the skills I am using for this build. And as primary attack I'm using Sacred Fire. For the first skill slot I use Draw and Quarter. For the second skill slot I use Condemn. For the third skill slot I'm using Falling Sword. And for the fourth and final skill slot I'm using Holy Banner. So let us take a look at the essences we're going to use. And first we take a look at the helmet essence. There we're using Errant Ignition. And what Errant Ignition says is that Holy Banner now mounts a standard of flames to your back that bolsters the primary attacks of all nearby allies to burn enemies. You can also see that at Essence Mastery level 4, the cooldown of the banner will be reduced by 7.2%. So, what does this skill look like when we use it? When we use it, there's going to be a big circle around us. And you can also see that our fist is on fire. And what will happen is that we're going to show you now here at the dummy. Whenever I am using primary attack on a target while I'm under effect of the Holy Banner, I will apply a dot effect. You can see now under the health bar of the dummy that I am, each time I do a primary attack, applying a dot effect. So this is what we are using for the helmet slot. So the next essence we're gonna look at is the chest piece. And here we're using Akarat's Rebuke. And what it says is that Condemn now fills your soul with Valor's Retribution for 5 seconds, causing every primary attack to unleash a lightning bolt at your target, dealing damage to all nearby enemies. And you can also see at Essence Mastery level 4, while using this essence, your Condemn damage will be increased by 18%. So, what does this skill look like when we use it? First, we can notice that there's a green bar next to the skill whenever we're using it, which indicates that this is a buff that is affected by beneficial effect duration, which is good to know. And as long as this buff is active, whenever we attack the target, we will see lightning strike from above. So if I start spamming primary attacks here at the dummy, you can see the lightning striking down over and over again. The next essence we're going to look at is an offhand called Torrential Refrain. And what it says is that Condemn immediately triggers all continual damage on the targets it hits, causing them to take the remaining damage instantly. At Essence Mastery 4, this essence will also decrease the cooldown of Condemn by 3.6%. So, what does this skill look like and what does it work? Whenever we activate Condemn and we hit the target with a primary attack, it will get hit by lightning. And thanks to Torrential Refrain, it will resolve all the dots applied by either yourself or your summons, so that the target takes all the damage at once. So this is what Torrential Refrain is used for. The next essence we're going to look at is one of our main hand essences, and it's called Horn Splitter. And what it says is that Sacred Fire now ignites enemies, burning them for over 2 seconds. And the damage of this dot effect is also increased by 90% at Essence Mastery level 4. So if we equip this essence and use the primary attack on a target, you can now see that we are applying a dot effect. So this is the Horn Splitter. The next essence we're going to look at is the Pants essence. And it is called Light Striders. So let's equip the Light Striders and see what they say. It says that Draw and Quarter no longer grants you a mount, and instead now summons 2 horses of light that charge at enemies, damaging them and causing knockback. We can also see that the damage done by drawing quarter is increased by 18% at Essence Mastery level 4. Let us also look, when we use this skill, what it looks like. So when I use drawing quarter, I am summoning 2 horses that attacks enemies. And these horses will also apply fire banner dots, which is very useful in this build. The next essence we're going to look at is the shoulder essence. And it's called the Folly of Sacrum. And what it does is that it increases the duration of your banner by 30% and an extra 9% if you're at Essence Mastery level 4. The point of using this essence is that we want as low downtime on the banner as possible, because the banner will not only help us to increase our damage, it will also help us to increase our movement speed. And we're going to have a look at how that works, which leads us to the next essence, that is our second offhand, and it's called Unholy Wall. And what it says is that each ally affected by Holy Banner increases the movement speed of you and your allies by 15%, up to a maximum of 45%. And at Essence Mastery level 4, the essence will also reduce the Holy Banner cooldown by 3.6%. So let us watch it together how it works. If only I am affected by the banner, I get 50% buff. But if there are 2 more targets, it can either be my summons or 2 allies, it will give the full 45% movement speed buff. And that's of course very important in dungeons, to move as fast as possible. The final essence we are using is called Skullcracker. And it's a main hand essence. And if we read what it says that Falling Sword now attaches the mark of the sword to you and nearby summons, causing swords to continually fall at the locations of those marked. At Essence Mastery level 4, this essence will also increase the damage of Falling Sword by 18%. So when we use Falling Sword, it will apply a buff on both ourselves and the summons nearby. And I choose to include this essence because in some situations in dungeons there's a lot of monsters spawning in a bigger room, and this will help clearing them off a lot faster. The first legendary gem I'm using in the helmet slot is a Bottled Hope. And at rank 8 it says, when you use a skill to grant the buff, increase the damage and movement speed of the target by 20.5% for 6 seconds. And this cannot occur more often than once every 20 seconds. It's also reducing the cooldowns by 4.5%. And in the chest slot I'm using Roiling Consequence, and it says that dealing damage sends you into a Roiling Rage for 6 seconds, during which your critical hit chance is increased by 36%, and critical hits cause a fiery explosion that burns nearby enemies for 36% base damage over 3 seconds. Explosions cannot occur more often than once every second, and Roiling Rage cannot trigger more often than once every 20 seconds. Your critical hit chance against burning enemies is also increased by 9%. And I choose to include this gem because critical hit chance is super strong when it comes to damage output. Plus I have another dot effect that works so well with Akarat's Rebuke and Torrential Refrain. The next gem I'm using, and I'm using it in the shoulder slot, is a rank 10 Blood-Soaked Jade. And of course you don't need a rank 10 Blood-Soaked Jade, but I would recommend you to put any rank 10 gem into this shoulder slot, because it will be great if you are able to awaken it. It's not necessary, but it will make this build work even better. And you can also see the awakening effect here, that it decreases the cooldown of Holy Banner by 10%. And what this gem does is that it increases all damage you deal by up to 24% while at full life, with a minimum bonus of 12% while at low life. And it also increases your movement speed by 10%, and additionally take 8% decreased damage while below 50% life. I also thought it would be interesting just for you guys to see what it looks like inside a rank 10 Blood-Soaked Jade. You can insert a Unity Crystal, a Cutthroat's Grin, a Lightning Core, and then a Swanson's Haunting, and on the last slot there it's an Echoing Shade. But I am able to unlock 3 of the effects, which is primary attack damage increased by 3%, skill damage by 2%, and damage done increased by 1% per party member. The next gem I'm using is in the pants slot, and it's a Pain Clasp, and it's at rank 10, and the pants are awakened, which will reduce the cooldown of Drawn Quarter by 10%. But the gem itself says that it increases damage dealt by 24% to enemies suffering from a continuous damage effect. And when an enemy suffering from continuous damage is within 10 yards, your movement speed is increased by 6%. And I also thought it would be interesting for you to see what it looks like inside, and I can put in a Blessed Pebble, the Abiding Curse, and also the Hunger to increase the resonance just a little bit. And this is not necessary at all, because this gives me defensive stats that you can see there on the left side. The next gem we're putting inside of our Horn Splitter, and it's a Viper's Bite. And yeah, let us first look at what it looks like inside, just for fun. You can put in Mocking Laughter, Volatility Shard, and Pain Clasp, which in turn will unlock some more offensive attributes. These are not necessary at all. It's a little bit overkill, but I'm lucky that I can do it at least. Let's also look at what the gem itself does. It says that damaging enemies poisons them with Viper's Venom, causing them to take 45% base damage plus 120 damage every second for 6 seconds. Enemies inflicted with Viper's Venom also have their attack speed reduced by 6%, and this effect cannot occur on the same target more often than once every 20 seconds. And I chose to include this gem because, once again, this is another dot effect that works well with Accurate Rebuke and Torrential Refrain. This helps me to deal a lot of damage in a very short period of time, which is very good for killing off a dungeon boss, for example. In a raid, I would rather use, for example, Fervent Fang, because that would increase the sustained damage a little bit. I can also mention here that the Awakened effect will increase the damage of Sacred Fire by 10%. The next gem I'm using is in the Torrential Refrain slot, and it's a Misery Elixir, which is the new 1-star gem. And if we read the text, what it does is that the duration of harmful effects you inflict is increased by 24%. And damage you deal to enemies suffering from harmful effects is increased by 2%. And I chose to include this gem because, as we've already mentioned, the combination of Accurate Rebuke and Torrential Refrain is very, very strong. And if we are able to prolong the duration of all the dot effects even further, each time I use Condemn, it will trigger even more damage from the Torrential Refrain. So anything that prolongs the harmful effect duration will increase the damage quite a lot. The next legendary gem I'm using inside the Skullcracker, and it's the Mother's Lament. And if we read here what it does, it says that whenever you deal damage, you have a 20% chance of gaining Maternal Disdain, increasing your critical hit chance by 32% for 6 seconds. Cannot occur more often than once every 20 seconds. When Maternal Disdain ends, you release a blood spike toward nearby enemies, dealing 54% base damage to any enemies it hits, and it also affects a bleed. And you can see here that the Awakening effect increases the Falling Sword damage by 10%. Let's also look inside the gem for fun. I can put in a Chained Death, I can put in a Follower's Burden, and finally I can put in a Power and Command. And this will give me some offensive stats. And these are, of course, once again, not necessary, but if you want to really juice out as much as possible, this is kind of neat. For the final slot, I use an Echoing Shade in the second main hand, Unholy Wall. It's at rank 8, and let's see what it does. Your attacks have a 50% chance to summon a shadow clone for 17 seconds that attacks nearby enemies with one of your primary attacks. You can have up to 3 shadow clones at one time, and their life is increased by 50%. Echoing Shades work like this. If it's rank 1 to 2, you can have 1 shadow clone at a time. If it's rank 3 or higher, you can have 2 shadow clones. And if it's rank 7 or higher, you can have 3 shadow clones. I would really recommend this gem into this build because these summons will also apply dot effects when they are buffed by the fire banner. And yeah, this is the whole concept of the build. So the more summons you can have, the more effective the fire banner will become. So these were all the legendary gems I'm using in this setup. Next, we're gonna start equipping our set pieces. And first, we want to equip 4 pieces of Vithus Urge. This will give us 2 very important effects when using this build. And the first one is that it will increase the duration of all beneficial effects on you and your party members by 30%. It will also increase the target's attack speed by 30% for 3 seconds each time you use a skill to grant a beneficial effect to yourself or a party member. Look at beneficial effect duration. It will increase both the Roiling Consequence buff, it will increase the Condemn buff, and I would argue that beneficial effect duration is almost important for all types of builds. But to juice out a lot of damage within a short period of time, it's even more important to increase attack speed with this build. Because if you remember how all the essences work, each time we use a primary attack, we will deal a lot of damage because we are resolving a lot of dots. And then before we are using the next primary attack, all the dots will refill from the summons and the fire banner and the Roiling Consequence, etc. Next, we are going to equip 2 pieces of Baron, and this we do because we want to prolong the harmful effect duration even longer, and this gives us another 30%, and I've already explained why this is so important. And lastly, we're going to equip 2 pieces of Angmet's Conflagration, and this we do for the exact same reason, because what it does is that it prolongs burn effects. So by 30%, which in this build will be the Roiling Consequence dot and the Fire Banner dot. We also want to take a look quick here on my secondary attributes, because if we look for potency, for example, this is another way to increase the duration of harmful effects. So I have invested quite a lot in increasing my potency lately, and as the second most important secondary attribute, I would say that it would be armor penetration. So try to put as much points in these 2 as possible. What you also have to think about is the magical attributes of your items. And if we look on the necklace here, or the gloves, or the rings, the main stat we are looking for is skill cooldowns reduced. And I would not equip any item that doesn't have this specific magical attribute. But on top of that, it can also be nice to have some movement speed or some damage done by your summons increased. If we look on the bracelets, you don't really have to worry at all about which magical attributes you find. Try to find intelligence or strength on the main attribute, or 3 sockets. On the waist and on the feet, on your chest and on your legs, there is really only one magical attribute we're looking for, and that is beneficial effect duration. So I would not equip any item in one of these slots if it doesn't have a decent amount of beneficial effect duration on it. Finally, we have the offensive legendary item slots, which is the helmet, the shoulders, the main hands, and the offhands. I would prioritize to find items that has critical hit chance on it. But other than that, there are many different options for this specific build. Attack speed is very good. Skill damage works very well with the fire banner, and critical hit damage is of course also very good because we will have high critical hit chance. And primary attack damage could also work to increase the damage of your summons just a little bit. What we also have to think about is speed, and therefore I am using the Warden Paragon tree. First of all, we can see combat tricks here that lets us move unhindered through packs of enemies, and we want to move fast in a dungeon. And then we also want to increase our size, and this is the main reason why we use Warden, because Rugged there increases our size by 5%. There's also another way to increase your size, and that is to change to Protector room in your Warband. And it's very important that your Protector remnants include the Shepherd's Burden, which increases your size by 15%. Because the bigger you are, the faster you run, and the more effective each movement speed buff becomes. So make sure that everyone in your dungeon party uses this Paragon and this Warband room. We also have to take a look on my familiar. I'm very proud of it. It's a Brood Talon with 200 insight. And let us look at the skills and why this familiar is so important. First of all, the active skill is very good because it shoots out an arc of flames that deals a lot of damage, and it also deals damage over time. So any monster that steps into that area will be affected by lingering wounds that we see here. And lingering wounds is the strongest armor break in the entire game. And at base value, it gives 27.5% armor break if it's legendary. But I have also capped my insight, which gives an additional 9%. And you can also see here, I have the golden combination. I also have tenacity, which reduces the cooldown of my familiar's active skill, which means I will apply lingering wounds more often. This also works extra well with this specific build because I have so much extra harmful effect duration, which will also prolong the duration of lingering wounds. So super strong familiar for this build. Before we leave the familiar subject, I also want to show you that you can choose between aggressively fighting or defensively fighting in the familiar menu. And here I would strongly recommend you to put on defensive mode, because then the familiar will only attack a target after you attack it first. Otherwise, the familiar will start attacking random enemies and trigger gem effects or set effects that you don't want to have triggered. Here, let's also just look at how this active skill works, and you can see there above the dummy that I apply the armor break. So if another enemy would step into that fiery area at the bottom, it would also be affected by lingering wounds. And here I'm going to try to enact a real life situation, or real life, but a dungeon situation, because most of the time all of the clones from Echoing Shade will be alive when the fight commences. So here I pre-spawn the clones, and then I attack the boss when it spawns. And as you could see there, the damage output is very high with this dungeon build. And remember now that this is not a DPS build, this is a dungeon build, so we have downgraded our DPS a little bit to include our mobility, etc. And yeah, of course, we also have to show you the build in action. So before we enter into a dungeon, it's very, very important to put on a very cool skin. And I really like the new Battle Pass skin combined with this weapon here. And luckily, I also have a nice cape at the moment because I'm part of the Immortals right now. And those wings also look very good with this skin. But enough about the skins. Let's start talking about the tactics within a dungeon. So first, when you spawn, imagine that there will also be teammates here, but what I usually do is that I use the fire banner and the horses immediately, because then I make sure that I get the maximum movement speed buff. And here in Fahir it's very good because the cooldown of the horse is ready before I reach that idol. So yeah, by now the others would already have killed the other idol and we could have stepped for the middle boss. So as you can see, the initial damage I do whenever I hit is super high, and this is also thanks to Viper's Bite that I chose to include instead of Fervent Fang, because I want this first hit to be as hard hitting as possible, because then I often kill off the monsters super fast. And look now how I pre-spawn all of my summons, so that when the boss takes damage, I can kill it super fast. Because it takes a little while to summon all the clones, but in most cases there is always some time to pre-spawn. And that's also why I did that at the dummy, to show you the damage output, because in most situations the clones will be up. And here we're also gonna see the Falling Sword in action. So you can see now that even though I'm on the right side of the elevator, the summons will take care of the mobs a bit further away, and Falling Sword will help quite a bit. And yeah, we are closing in on the end on this dungeon run, and let's see how decisive we manage to beat this spider guy who waits at us at the end. And also here, after this elevator, I always trigger the banner immediately to give everyone movement speed so that we can move in quick and kill this boss.
So I really hope that you enjoy this video and that you have the chance to try out this build. If you have any type of questions or need any tips, feel free to comment on this video. And I would also really appreciate if you like this type of content to subscribe to my channel and leave a thumbs up, because your support means so much. And until I see you again, I would like to wish you a nice evening or a nice day wherever you are. And to all of my clan members in Nyx, I would of course like to say Voruk Nyx, Sholak Sol. So bye bye.